We've now learned the essentials for animating inside of 3ds Max. It's now time to take all of those tools and techniques that we've learned and put them to good use to start working on our flight sequence. So again, to reiterate our goal, it's to take the techniques, take the tools that we've learned, and use it to have our ship fly off from its fueling station into the distance and create a really cool project. So let's say we get started by heading over to layers, and we'll show a few items. We can show our fueling line, we can show the fueling station as well. Later we will be animating our bone objects that deform this fueling line, so we'll get to that when it's time. But this brings up a good point. How should we handle this? What's going to be the most manageable way to handle this? Well, I find that if we block in our animation, work on it one step at a time, that's going to help us to not only not have a headache as we work on this, but it will also help us to work faster and work smarter. So here's the idea. We'll have our VTOL fly into the air first, fly up, and then we'll have it fly away. As far as the fueling line goes, we'll make sure that it gets disconnected first. So we'll need to blend between IK and FK. Yes, we'll get some of what we learned in the rigging section involved. We'll also use a bit of a rig for our camera, so we'll get some camera animation involved as well. And you'll notice that the way we will approach this is going to be not only, again, manageable, but fun, and it's going to help you to animate your own props with time-saving techniques. Alright, so we have a few choices here for our animation mode. We can work with auto key or set key. I like to work as fast as possible, so I like to work with auto key, but we just need to be very careful when it's on. And if we need to, we could always choose set key mode if we need to test a certain position for our airship. Remember, with set key, it looks at your selection set to determine what should receive animation. If you have it set to selected, everything can be keyframed. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and set this back to auto key. Now, how are we going to go ahead and do this given the range we have? Well, we should go in and set our end time to the range that we'll use for this animation, and we'll make sure that we stay within that range, that we don't deviate from that, because that's the range that we have been given from our director. So what we'll do is change our end time to 220. Let's go ahead and hold down Control Alt. Let's go ahead and drag with the right mouse button until we have reached 220. Excellent. Remember, if you right click on your playback controls section here, you can get to your time configuration dialog and adjust your start and end time from here as well. For our frame rate, we're going to go ahead and stick with film. Again, we want to check that before we set any keys, and that's already good to go. We've set that earlier on. So we can now go ahead and choose OK, and we are ready to get started. So let's say we have the engine turn on. We'll have the fan spin before the ship starts to fly away. We don't want that to happen too early, because we kind of want this to feel as if there's a pilot actually in here that's about to fly away. So the pilot might adjust a few things before he turns on the engine, and we want to think about that, really get into the mind of our character or the object we're animating. So let's say we have the engine start to spin from frame 10 and on. So on frame 10, we'll go ahead and select our animation control. Let's go ahead and find our fan speed parameter. We'll go ahead and hold down Shift and right click to set a 0 keyframe. And now, a few frames after, on about frame 30, we could go in and have the spin start to happen. We could go ahead and set it to 100%. When 30, notice the key has automatically been saved. So here's what we end up with when we play it back. So now you can see that the fans will start to go in and spin now. Alright, very nice. So after that, then we want the ship to start taking off. So we want the fans to spin for a bit of time before the aircraft starts to take off. Again, the character in the cockpit here is preparing for this takeoff, so it's probably adjusting a few things. So let's say on frame 70, we go there and we go ahead and set a key with the big key button. Remember, keep in mind with key filters, which we've already set, we just want to make sure that the all objects that need to receive keyframes will. So that's position, rotation, and our custom attributes. Let's go ahead and now click on the big key button on frame 70. If you ever notice that when you go in and use your big key button, even if you have custom parameters set, that the keyframes aren't on those sliders, if you notice when you go ahead and move back to that frame, you will see the keyframes, so it's not an issue. Alright, so now let's go ahead and have the ship fly upward. We're not concerning ourselves with the fueling line right now. We just want the ship to fly up. So let's go to our move tool, and we'll go ahead and bring it up a bit. Alright, great. So we have our ship flying up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the animation. We'll go ahead and play it back. Great, so that's pretty fun. And now, when we get to 140, again what we'll do is use the big key button to make sure all poses have been locked down here. Just a way of, again, blocking in our work and making sure that when we start to refine things that all of those keyframes we need already exist. Yes, when we use the big key button, we're creating several keys, but if we can lock in our idea, it will be a lot easier for us to go in and polish that idea afterwards. Alright, so the ship is now lifted off. And now it's time to work on having the landing gear work for us as well. So you can see right now the landing gear is up. So let's go ahead and adjust that. We do have keys that already exist. So this is going to be really simple from our curve editor. Let's right click and let's go ahead and find our landing gear. So there's the landing gear for the front. What we could do here is go in and start by deleting our keyframes. So I've just deleted all keyframes up to frame 0. We're going to go ahead and leave this keyframe here because what we could do is use it to make sure the landing gear is down. So we could set this to a value of 0. Let's do the same thing for our landing gear in the center. Again, we'll delete our keyframes from 70 to 140. Let's go ahead and get rid of them. And then right here on frame 0, we'll go ahead and set our value to 0 to bring the landing gear down. Alright, great. So now, as the ship starts to take off, let's go ahead and think about when the landing gear should come up. We don't want it to come up the same time the ship starts to come up because that is very robotic, very linear. So instead, we can make sure that there's an offset between the time at which the landing gear comes up and the time at which the ship comes up to its height on 140. So we can have it start on frame 100. Let's go to frame 100. We'll go to our front and center landing gear. We'll hold down shift and right click to lock in these 0 keys. And now when we get to, let's say about 125, we can go in and bring up our landing gear. So we could go ahead and set both to 100%. Alright, let's take a look at this. When we play back our animation, take a look. The fans spin, our ship starts to come up, and then the landing gear will come up. Very nice. Now, right now, the landing gear comes up at the same time. So let's go ahead and offset this. We should probably have the front landing gear come up faster since it's a bit smaller. So remember, we can use an expression in our curve editor to offset all of our keys quickly. With our animation control selected, let's right click and head over to our curve editor. We're just about finished with this lesson. We'll go ahead and grab our front landing gear. Let's go ahead and select both keyframes. And now, what we'll do here is we will offset our frame value. So we're going to go ahead and set this 3 frames prior to the center landing gear coming up. So that's going to be n-3. When we hit enter, you can see now we've created an offset. Beautiful. If we were to hold down Control Alt and drag with our middle mouse button, we could zoom in to our range to go ahead and see our F curve closely just to see what's happening. So it's slowing out of the first key and then coming into our last key. If you'd like, you could also just kind of pan this a bit just to adjust the view using the middle mouse button as well. Alright, that's going to work out great. So I'm now going to go ahead and just take a look at the animation, just playing it back and making sure we like the timing here. Excellent. Alright, so let's say we stop the lesson here. We have created an animation where our ship starts up and then it starts to fly up away from the fueling station. So in the next lesson, we'll make sure that the ship flies forward. We'll also add a bit more detail.